With the Eurovision Song Contest 2020 cancelled, it fell to Eurovision Europe Shine Light to take its place. And it's fair to say that this replacement ended up getting a bit of a mixed reaction online. Now, whilst I was watching it live, I definitely was one of those people who was a bit more negative towards the show. But now that the dust has settled and we're a couple of weeks removed from it, my opinion has started to shift slightly on the show. So with that in mind, I thought it would be a great opportunity to look back whilst it's still relatively fresh in people's minds. So with that being said, my name is Chris, and this is my review of Eurovision Europe Shine a Light. Just before we start, I'm not really going to go into my thoughts about Eurovision 2020 being cancelled and what could have been a replacement for it. I think that is something for another video, which again, will come at some point when I start talking more about Eurovision 2020. But one immediate positive that I have to say is I'm just glad that there was a broadcast at all. And a huge, huge shout out to everybody who is working at the Dutch broadcasters. I cannot imagine the stress to put on a show that quickly that was so different with all the social distancing rules in place. So really, really big shout out and well done to them. That being said, I will say that I think some of the immediate negative reaction towards Shine a Light was because of some of the other alternative programming that was on offer. I know that, for example, in the UK, we had a show by the BBC, which was actually a surprisingly good celebration of 15 of the best Eurovision songs. There was a vote, there was interviews, and it seemed to work really, really well. In Germany, they had the free Eurovision Song Contest. They also had the alternative version that they did with some of the acts actually there performing live. And because all of these shows from all the different countries got the kind of celebratory tone right, it really stood out compared with how Eurovision Shine a Light started. Because, oh boy, was the tone of this show weird. For at least a good first hour of this show, it felt like this was the funeral of the Eurovision Song Contest. It really wasn't a celebration, which is what it had been built up to be in the publicity and advertising beforehand. Now, I completely understand that getting the tone of this show right would have been a near impossible task. They were really stuck in a really difficult position. But at the same time, there was no escapism. And that is really at heart what Eurovision is about. Eurovision is a 3-4 hour entertainment show. And there was very little in that first part of Shine a Light that was entertaining. The performances were good, as were the performers. My issue was more the context that they were presented in. The good news is that tone started to slowly shift, and it did really get more positive and just generally better as the show went on. Particular highlights, I think, were Maria Sarapovic's performance of Molitva. I think it just shows just the power of that song and the way it can move you, and it just goes to show why it is one of the best Eurovision winners of all time, in my opinion. Mikael Schulte and Ilse Delang's duet on Ein bisschen Frieden was another highlight. I would say that was the right kind of song as well for this celebration. You know, Ein bisschen Frieden is a song about peace and love and giving, which is what we need. We need those sort of happy, lift me up, lifting the world up songs. Another great performance was Netta's Cuckoo. Again, I think that just shows just how good Netta is and the different styles and the way she can perform these songs. It goes to show what a star she is. But I do think that also leads me on to my other issue with this show, which is it celebrated the stars that we have had at Eurovision, but it didn't really give that much love to the stars of Eurovision 2020. It really felt like they were just trying to sweep the 2020 acts and songs under the rug. Other than Diodato getting a bit more airtime for obvious reasons, only showing 30 seconds of each song and then that little message from the performer really didn't say much about 2020 to me. And again, this was kind of marketed as a celebration of Eurovision 2020 and its artists. Now, I'm not saying that they should have played, the whole 3 minutes of each song. That would be overkill. But I would say that, they could have done a little bit more. Had they trimmed some of those earlier performances out, even if you give 10 or 15 seconds more to these songs, it might help more people grow to love them like Eurovision fans have. For some of these artists, unfortunately, this is the only Eurovision exposure they may ever get. And I do really feel sorry for them that they weren't given just a little bit more airtime. I'm not really going to talk that much about the videos and the snippets that we saw. I would say if you haven't seen Diodato's performance of Fai Rumore in the Verona Arena, do go check that out. I mean, obviously finish this video and then go check it out, but really you should see it, it's incredible. But overall, I just got the sense that, again, looking at the other alternative broadcasting, they did a much better job of celebrating Eurovision 2020. And I know that they did put all the songs on YouTube, but Compared with the 70 million people who apparently watch Shine a Light, they didn't get anywhere near as many views, so it's just a shame. Of course, I think that the thing that really will stick out in people's memory from this show is the final performance of Love Shine a Light, and for really good reason. And obviously I might be a little bit biased because it is one of my favourite Eurovision songs of all time, but I thought that this was just wonderful. Seeing all the acts, or at least, all the acts that mattered, taking part, I think just said such a great message, and I think that is really what I wanted this whole show to be. And it did give that wonderful sort of moment of hope right at the end, along with the confirmation that we are going back to Rotterdam in 2021. And in a way, it almost became a nice narrative structure of the show. It started with the gloom at the beginning, moving through to the hope of what might come in the future towards the end. Now, I don't know whether or not that was actually planned. It kind of feels like they thought they were, celebrating the entire way through, of course, but that isn't how it actually seemed to come across. All in all, there were some really great moments in this show, though, and I think that if they'd have been able to carry that across the whole 2 hours, this would have been something that Eurovision fans would have remembered and talked about for years to come. But unfortunately, I don't think it was consistent enough, and whilst it was a huge opportunity for it to go down in the history books, I think it will be forgotten about. But maybe at the same time, that's not a bad thing, as we hopefully build towards a future where we never have to think about something like this happening ever again. So those are my thoughts about Eurovision Europe Shine Light. Do let me know what you thought about the show down in the comments as well. I just want to say again as well, just a huge thank you to everybody who has been subscribing, sharing, commenting. It means so much to me. If you haven't seen on my Twitter and my Instagram, I have been asking for some thoughts about future videos. So there are quite a few in the pipeline. I will be talking about my sort of press experience and my experience at Eurovision as a whole. They might end up being 2 separate videos, not entirely certain yet. But yeah, that is all to come. If you aren't following me already, links are in the description below. Otherwise, do keep safe in this very, very weird time. Do comment if you would like to. Subscribe, hit that notification bell, hit the like button. Until next time, I will see you later, guys. Bye.